Hello and welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. We have Jen Abel with us today, the co-founder of Jellyfish that helps early stage SaaS founders with sales and go-to-market. We spoke to Jen sometime last year. It was a B2B sales masterclass that was very popular with our listeners. On this podcast, we're going to be doing something different. Jen's tweets are really interesting, and I always have this urge to understand more. So I thought we could dig a little deeper in a freewheeling conversation. So, again, if you haven't listened to the earlier podcast, you definitely should. It's a great primer for everything you'll hear today. Anyway, here goes. Hey, Jen, welcome back. Great to talk to you again.
It's great to be here.
So we'll move on to the second theme, which is customers, right? Now you're in front of a customer and there's a whole bunch you can learn from them, right? So you have a tweet that says early stage startup founders, sales rejection equal to redirection. Use this to your advantage.
Yep. Yeah. What that means is there are two good answers when you're talking to a client: yes or no, right? They're binary. The maybes are where there's meaning exhaustion, there's confusion, there's noise. When someone says, "Hey, I wouldn't use this," dig into it. They're giving you the breadcrumbs and leading you to the pulse. If someone says, "Yes, I'm using that," well, that's obvious what that means. But I always tell founders, when you write personalized notes out into the market to start to generate meetings with folks, if it's personalized, people will say yes or no. The no's are just as strong as the yeses because it will help you go through the process of elimination. Why did all these people say no? What do they have in common? What can we avoid in the future? How do we cross this group off our list? How do we find the pulse? So use rejection not as something to be upset about. You should be excited by it because, again, it's only redirecting you and setting you further on the path to finding the truth. So, yeah, don't waste those.
Yeah, and there's usually a lot of founder empathy, right? I mean, even if you're talking to experienced people, if you kind of paint a bit of a picture in terms of your journey and what you're trying to do and so on and so forth, there's usually a lot of founder empathy at the other end, right?
Yeah.
Because compared to, let's say, another salesperson trying to sell them some stuff.
Exactly. And the reason why I think people get so frustrated at salespeople is salespeople, again, assume everyone sits at this plateau of everyone is looking for a solution when in reality that's not true at all. Right. So they're pushing something and there's also great salespeople out there that know that. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I actually had a founder reach out to me yesterday about how could they be involved in our process to help founders. And I learned about a lot about the problems they're solving. And I said, listen, the problem you're solving, these people are well before working with us. And hopefully that insight helped him understand he needs to go a little bit more earlier stage than Series A and Series B stage.
Right. So you have a related tweet as well, which is customer discovery is problem validation. Solicit feedback on the problem, not the product. Right.
Yep.
And that just ties to, understanding the problem a little more. Right. I mean, rest assured, the person you're presenting to has a problem. It may not be the problem that you're talking about, but they definitely have a problem. So
Yep.
dig a little deeper in terms of their day in the life, their
Yep.
challenges, their priorities, and so on.
Yep.
Don't just say that, hey, this is what I do, and would this be interesting or useful to you?
You're spot on. Our thesis at Jellyfish is when you go out and collect market feedback, these are not customers, mind you. When you go out and collect feedback from people that are not your customers, there is truth in the problem, right? There's truth in understanding where their problems sit, what they're facing. They're not going to lie to you about their problems, right? People will lie to you about your product. It is people want to be nice, people want to be kind, people don't want to tell someone their baby's ugly, right? So be very careful about taking product feedback from someone that's not paying you yet because truthfully, they might not actually be your end customer. They might be setting you off on the wrong path. You'll become a consulting company if you're building for everybody or you try and build something custom to everybody. You really want to be, again, solicit feedback from the market regarding their problem. It's your job as the founder and as the visionary to figure out how to solve that through a solution. The market doesn't know that, right? That whole quote of Henry Ford, when he said, ask the product or ask the market what they want, they would have said faster horses, not a
Faster
car.
horses.
Well, correct. They shared the problem. They wanted to accelerate from going from point A to point B. And he knew that's not what they needed. This is actually maybe more aligned with what they needed. So I always say, I think the Henry Ford quote is often misconstrued.
So, so much of the 0 to 1 is also building with your customer, right? Especially in the enterprise. I mean, really, the customer informs the roadmap. But then, I mean, you have to be also careful that you don't get swayed by every whim and fancy of the customer, right? And especially if it's a large enough customer, then you're tempted to kind of listen to everything because, hey, there's this, huge Fortune 500, Fortune 100 big company exec who's talking to you, and if he or she is saying something, it must be real, right? And founders don't often kind of validate it across four other
Yep.
customers or four other prospects and so on and so forth, right? So
Yeah.
there's also that deft balance that they have to strike between listening to their customer, but also maintaining that even keel between how much of it they're going to listen.
Exactly, and that's all comes back to making sure when you're going out to validate the problem, where are the themes repeatable, right? You will hear, I would say 30 to 40% of everything we collect is repeatable. The other piece is very specific to the need of that organization and where they are, right? So, how do you now take that 30 to 40% and now productize it, knowing that the market is feeling all of these things. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Do not over index on building for one. If you build for one, you're building for one only, right?
Yeah. Another interesting tweet. I don't know who does this actually, but surveys are the laziest ways to do customer discovery. One-to-one conversations unlock earned insights. Why behind the why? I mean, this seems obvious, but
You'd be surprised.
what do you think?
There's a lot of so where people do use surveys and it is appropriate is when you're have your current customers, right? These people are already paying for you. And maybe you'll do a survey to understand where things are at, how things are going after the year, maybe give some feedback because getting on a call with 1,000 customers is not obtainable. Maybe you'll get on a call with the top 10 or 15 and then hope to use the insights and repeatable themes from the group of 1,000 to inform some decisions. When you're doing surveys with people who are not your customer, oh gosh, that's where there is, I call it the devil will live there, right? Where you're going to get feedback, in all different directions. You're not going to be able to focus the conversation. You're not going to be able to ask the why behind the why. So I think survey feedback is absolutely okay and normal and fine for assessing your current customers. Using it to assess the market and validate, there's a lot of companies selling this right now, by the way. I have yet to see it work, and if it truly worked, I think we would have heard about it by now.
Yeah, and you don't know what questions to ask either, right? I mean, oftentimes, I mean, you're poking at things. I mean, you're poking to see what sticks, right? And then you're doubling down on whatever seems to be kind of working, right? So it's difficult. And I don't know, I think Taleb says this, right? Watch what people do and not what they say, right? Because oftentimes people say one thing and do another, especially when they don't really have any skin in the game, right? I mean, they aren't really paying for anything right now. They have nothing to lose, really. So yeah. In order to build momentum, you have to recruit customers one to one manually. Sales equal to one to one unlocks, marketing equal to one to many unlocks, branding equal to one to all unlocks, I suppose. Yeah.
Mouthful,
So
isn't it?
it is. I mean, I've never had to read tweets like this. So, I mean, yeah,
Oh,
it's a strange experience.
yeah, no, it's all shorthand. I think that's why it's probably hard to read. So what I mean by that is sales in its essence, right? Not sales in the common nomenclature, not always, but sales in its essence is one to one. You are in the room, learning, understanding, hearing, empathizing, right? That's all what sales is about. People will go out, right? And we work with founders all the time in the 0 to 1 stage and just try and blanket market, right? They'll go do big events. They'll pay to go do big events. They'll pay for rankings on Google. They'll pay for Facebook and Twitter ads. I mean, LinkedIn ads, you name it, right? And in reality, we sure don't know what these people care about or who they are. So how are you're just marketing to anyone willy-nilly? More importantly, in marketing, they have to be actively in search, right? They're the ones that are like, actually, I am thinking about that. That's a great idea. Let me raise my hand and talk to these folks. But in reality, again, a large part of the market might not be searching for it today. And if they are, goal is hopefully to now inbound to that specific group of people. So when we say sales versus marketing, you have to get the real raw insights. And the only way to get those earned insights is through one-on-one conversations, right? You're never going to get that through one in marketing. People are just going to ignore you, or you might get a few people trickle in, but you also want to be rejected, believe it or not. You want to hear someone say, no, I wouldn't use this because it's going to focus you even further.
Yeah. No, 2 points to add to that, right? I mean, something you mentioned earlier as well. Marketing is a force multiplier. If you don't have anything, there's really nothing to sort of amplify there. That's the first thing. And second, early stage marketing is actually, I mean, it's shockingly similar to sales, right? I mean, I've been on countless prospect calls. I mean, I've had to talk to so many people, even at events and so on and so forth, right? And so really, I mean, you need to get someone who's a little sales oriented, I feel.
Yep,
I mean,
yep,
someone who sits behind a desk and writes pretty copy, maybe the 10th marketer you could hire, or maybe
yep,
the 14th marketer you could
yeah,
hire. But those first 5 or 10 people have to have that sales orientation, that hustle
yep,
mindset.
yep,
And that's why actually when we were building out our team at Vimo as well, we called them growth folks, right? I didn't even
yeah,
call them marketers, actually. I just called
yeah.
them growth, which is that we'll do whatever it takes to kind of understand where our market is, who our customers are, and then get our product in their hands in the fastest, cheapest, best way possible.
I couldn't agree more. If you can't get one to one right, you're never gonna get one to many right.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's that reality check, right? I mean, it kind of hit me as well when 2018 I was at a couple of events in the US, and had written all of these amazing sales scripts and everything, and then you get in front of a prospect and you start
Yeah,
like rattling off your sales spiel, and the guy has got this blank look on his face, right?
yeah.
Like,
Like,
what are you
what
talking about?
exactly.
And then you learn that I mean, the reality is quite different, and then you have to talk to them in simple terms, right? And I think founders either try to build their marketing team too early because they think that marketing is going to get them 100, 200 leads a day,
Yeah.
and then they're going to have just by sheer odds they're going to convert a few of these into customers, or they put it off until it's too late.
Well, another thing too is you're gonna go up against mature companies whose marketing budgets would, like, just squash yours, right? So you're, like, fighting a game
Absolutely.
that you have no chance to win. So, again, one-on-one founder-led sales is a natural competitive advantage, and I'm just shocked more people don't take advantage of it. Even just the cold email, you send a really strong personalized cold email, that's the easiest way to stand out. Most cold emails are garbage.
Oh, shucks. It's terrible. I think we should do another podcast where we just like disown all the
Yeah,
horrible cold emails we get. All right. Where is your customer on awareness ladder? Need this before providing any guidance. One, aware of problem seeking to solve today. Two, aware of problem not motivated today. Three, unaware of problem feeling symptoms. And four, don't believe problem exists.
yes. Yeah. So what that is that's the buyer awareness mapping, right? Or problem awareness mapping, right? Where again, founders, and it's no fault to their own, they're just really passionate about the product, right? Will immediately rely on a demo to try and get a sales done. Right? They're like, if I just show them this, or as I quote many founders I've heard before, if I just get them in the room and show them my product, it's 100% close rate. And I say to them, I'm like, "Wow, I've never seen anyone do 100% close rate from showing a demo, but that's pretty incredible." So, do not listen, you can show your if someone is actively seeking to solve today, right? They know their problems, they believe you're a good alternative, go ham on the demo. Go features and benefits, that's fine because they already know the problem. They know the urgency to solve for it. Talk about, maybe doing a pilot with them, all of those things. Where most of the majority lives, unfortunately, is aware of the problem, not motivated to solve today. A demo will only further push them away. To your point, I think you said this beautifully. You need to use inertia and momentum to break through status quo. And the only way to do that is by educating them on how painful this actually is or will get the more time goes on. And it's only then, when they get to that stage of, okay, now I'm actively seeking a solution, does it make sense to show the demo? A demo, again, only works well when someone is adamantly feeling the pain, clearly understands the reason to solve for it, and can speak to it quite well. But most of the market's not there, right? Most of the market requires handholding, requires webinars, requires educational led content, requires ROI calculators, requires all of these things that we know the market asks for in the sales process. And they ask for those things because they are blatantly telling you where they sit on that maturity perspective. And salespeople and founders just, being a bit more green on this, just think everyone sits here, right? And it's a misconception. Most of these people are like on step 2 or 3 of the awareness ladder, and you have to educate them to get to the next level. A great salesperson, probably like yourself, can do that, but most salespeople don't have that foresight that that's what needs to get done.
Yeah. No, I think, I've made this mistake so many times actually earlier, which is, just if I could just show them how the product looks, right? I mean, they will see it and they will get it, right? But, I've realized it's perhaps the single biggest thing that kind of determines everything afterwards is the discovery call, right? How you run that discovery call, what you say on that, and, what kind of questions you ask them and so on. Because pretty much everything, depends on that, right? The way you define the conversation after that. But I've also seen that, founders or, even salespeople can be a little hesitant, right? Because they're asking too many questions to the prospect, and they don't want to be seen as, frustrating or irritating or something of
Yeah.
that sort, right? So how does one
Yeah.
strike that balance?
Yeah. Everyone's a little bit different, right? So everyone gets a little bit more frustrated than others. If you know that if they can articulate how they've historically solved it how they have historically not been able to solve it successfully, right? So it's still a problem and they've tried to solve it before. If they can articulate the implications for not solving for it, if we don't solve this in the next month, here's what's at risk. Okay. Those are leading indicators and qualifiers that you can go into the demo. Okay. And you can start to talk more about who you are and how you're going to help them solve it. If they aren't able to answer those questions, then I would actually dig and say, "Listen, I'm more than happy to go deeper, but it doesn't sound like this is necessarily a priority. Can you help me understand why maybe we're chatting today?" And let them open up, let them get more vulnerable. Like, you don't have to ask them questions that they're not able to answer or they don't wanna feel stupid to not say, "I don't know." Ask them questions about themselves. Well, maybe what motivated to get you on a call? From what you've shared, it doesn't sound like this is necessarily a priority. And then let them tell you why it may be or why it may not be. Because they might say, "You know what? You're right. We're probably 6 months out. Great. You're not spending any more time with that lead." Or they might say, "You know what? It is a priority, but maybe I'm not answering it in this. Maybe it's more of this other way to think about it." So use them as your guide. I mean, they're on a call with you. Yes, I agree with you. Don't pepper them with questions and reading a script, right? Ask them 3 or 4 thoughtful questions. Use those questions to determine where they sit on that maturity perspective. And are you in a position and have you earned the right to now talk about the solution? Or is this now an education play? And you're like, "Listen, it sounds like you're feeling XYZ. Let's dig deeper there because I really want to understand if we're the right fit for you." And just being honest.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that has worked for me, I mean, and usually I get on the call once, we've already had a discovery call, right? I mean, so I do have a bunch of these questions already answered, but just to kind of reinforce it, right? I mean, so when I do
Reiterate.
get on this call or meeting or demo or whatever it is, I structure it in this way that, the actual demo is actually 25 minutes, 20 or
Yeah.
25 minutes, right? Because oftentimes when you send an hour's calendar invite, people assume that you're going to start minute 2, start showing the product and features and everything, and then up until minute 59, right? Which is absurd actually.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is set the agenda right off the top, saying that, hey, we're going to be talking about these things, right? And by the end of this is what I want to achieve. I want to perhaps understand a little more about your use case. I want to understand your procurement process, so on and so forth, right? So that I can invest more in this process.
Yeah, you're spot on with how you're approaching that. I mean, the other thing too is the product you have built, right? That full solution, that full suite, they're probably only going to use 20% of it in the
Exactly.
right? So you're showing them 100%. They know they're only going to use 20%. So in their head, they're like, "Wait a second. 80%, I'm not even gonna why am I gonna pay for this if 80% I'm not gonna use?" So now they've just opted out because they're like, "I'm spending $50,000 to get $5,000 worth of value," even though that might be true, that's how they're making the math in their head, and now you may have lost the deal. So to your point, using the discovery to pinpoint specifically what to demo, what that agenda should look like, what other questions you should be guiding through, your demo should never look the same for everybody. I think that's where a lot of people go awry.
Yeah. No, oftentimes I think in demos, I mean, I end up showing less than 30 or 40% of the product, right? I mean, and it's simply not relevant for them. I mean, you don't really have to throw the kitchen sink at them, right? I mean, and show them everything that you've got. It
Yeah,
does the opposite, in fact. I mean, like you said, I mean, people kind of think that either it's irrelevant or they're probably paying too much for this anyway, right?
yeah.
So, all right. So this ties in with the next tweet that we have, which is you don't have a closing problem, you have a qualification problem.
Yeah. What that means is no one should be moving down the funnel unless you have the specific gates checked. Does this person believe a problem exists? Yes or no? If they say no, they shouldn't move into the funnel. Now that they agree a problem exists, can they articulate the implications for not solving for it? Have they tried to historically solve for this in the past? Do they have budget to solve for this? Are they looking to close this in the next 90 days? Right. And all of a sudden, people go into procurement without any of these questions answered. Right. And all of a sudden, now they're sitting in procurement. And I tell people, I hear from people all the time selling the enterprise, we have a procurement problem. I'm like, procurement isn't the problem. Procurement's there to assess,
Negotiate. That's
making
it.
sure they're getting right. Yeah, the quality, all that thing. That means your buyer doesn't care enough to push procurement to move forward, right? So I always say if you're in procurement for more than 3 months, that's a little bit of a scary place to be. Because if these people truthfully care and are urgent to solve for it, they're going to push it through. And it's never a closing problem, right? That means you have a qualification problem, meaning somewhere in the stage you didn't ask the right question or you misinterpreted and you push them through the funnel. No one should get to your close rate, truthfully, your close rate at after proposal should be close to 85%, right? Not because you're, a rock star salesperson, but because you're overly conservative about who you're putting through.
Yeah, and I think if you have a champion in the organization, then I think they will lead the procurement, right? I mean, they will maneuver all of these things internally to get this across the line, really.
Yeah. Yeah. This is actually something I learned selling into the enterprise. Believe it or not, this is kind of a wild insight in the US market. A large company like the Walmarts of the world, the IBMs of the world, the PepsiCos of the world, never want to be a client if they make up 50% of your revenue. So you also need to know when to target some of these companies because they get very nervous if they're representing 50% of your revenue, right? Because again, you're going through that 0 to 1 stage. You've got to price appropriately because in their contract, they won't sign a deal with someone where they're representing over, I think it's actually over 30% of the revenue. Because they don't want to be at fault. This thing doesn't go through and they pull out. They don't want, obviously, the whole business to be at risk. So be very thoughtful about who you're targeting to and what these little nuances are. So, before you even go into procurement, what are the 4 things your company cares about and procurement's going to sniff out? And then maybe price yourself appropriately or have that, have that conversation. In order to avoid procurement, is there a price point? We can show you what we can do. We can get this through. We can begin working together. Sometimes there is, and you can avoid procurement and do that later on the expand side.
So you bring up an important point, right? Which is this whole persona of the middle manager, or let's say a business decision maker at a very, very, very large company. It's a very difficult thing because I mean they really have no. I don't want to say they don't have skin in the game. I mean it's just tough for them to get things done, right? I mean there's just so much of internal bureaucracy. There's really no incentive to step out off the line and do something different. So if you were to, should you even be selling to these folks in the beginning? I mean in the 0 to 1.
So the answer is it depends, right? If you are solving a problem that only this market is facing, then obviously, yes, you have to, right? But price yourselves accordingly. Create a sales cycle that is attainable, right? Like don't tell your investors you're going to get a deal done in 6 months when we know it's typically 6 months once they approve the proposal, right? So it depends on the problem you are solving and the specific ICP you're going after. However, I will say if you aren't able to sustain a 12, 18-month sales cycle in the beginning, maybe enterprise isn't the right place to be. Enterprise deals take, anywhere between 9 months and 16 months, right? It really varies. And it also depends on what you're selling, right? If you're selling a highly technical product where there's deep integrations and they're going to force you to go through all of these different security protocols and things like that. I mean, that's another thing too. So I'm hesitant to say yes or no. I think it truly depends on the problem you're solving, how technical it is, and what your runway is as well.
Right. All right. Revenue is a lagging indicator. Repeatable insights are unmet needs, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. So revenue is a lagging indicator, meaning, let's assume your sales cycle to get a deal closed is 6 to 9 months. How do you know if you're on the right track before that closes? Right. So what you need to look for is repeatable themes to give you the confidence and conviction and know where to double down, knowing that getting that revenue is something that happens after being correct the whole way through. So you can use the repeatable themes, the head nods, the historics, the implications, right? To now focus you on, okay, we're on the right path, we're marching forward, versus trying to go out to anyone and try and getting the deal done.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think, having a good handle on the percentage conversions, right? I mean, from top of the funnel to middle,
Yep.
give you a very good indication in terms of what are those
Yeah.
themes that are resonating, because
Yep.
um, like you mentioned, revenue is a lagging indicator. You don't realize that, oh, okay, you know what, I mean, I should be doing that, and go back six
Yep.
months and then focus
Yeah.
on those
Yeah.
kind of prospects or problems, right?
Yep.
So yeah. And I think, the next tweet is my favorite one. It's a pet peeve of mine as well. So a non-paying customer is an oxymoron.
Yes, what that basically means is in order for someone to be defined as a customer versus a customer means there has to be some level of monetary exchange, right? If they're not paying for it, they're a user, right? And if they're paying it through time, they're a user. If they're paying it through cash and money, they can be a customer. So that's what that means. If someone is not paying it for it, they're a user. So don't conflate the two terms.
No, I've been at the other side of the table, right, where people try to say that, hey, you know what, why don't you just do a free, and this is after I've kind of explained to them that, hey, this doesn't solve my problem, or is not my priority, or I simply don't want to give time and effort to this, right? The moment you say that, I'll do a free POC for you, I mean, you're just setting yourself up for failure, really.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, there's gotta be some level of skin in the game. Now, I understand if you wanna do a 30-day free pilot because you have learned from insights that 95% of people convert to paying, that's one thing, right? If you're just doing a free pilot because you don't think you can get money out of them, that's a whole different other problem, right? So, know why you're doing certain things, and I always say in the beginning, investors are want to see that someone is willing to pay for it, right? Especially in the beginning. So try not to do free pilots. Again, if it's going to be a 30-day free pilot to get them on, to get them to be convinced that you're the best alternative, that's a great tactic and that's one thing. To just give it away for free because you're not sure if these people are willing to pay for it and you hope they do, don't fool yourself.
No, if it's a problem worth solving, I mean, I'm sure that people can find a few $1,000 or a few tens of thousands, right? I mean, for
Absolutely.
sure, because they've already budgeted for something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're working with a client right now where they want to do a free paid pilot. And I agree with them because they're up against three competitors. They're the most immature. They want to show them how mature their tech is. So they instead of showing it to them, they're like, let us actually show you what we can do with your data. And they're doing it for free. But we know their budget, what they're willing to spend at the end of that 30 days. So it's more of an accelerator to help them get that cash in hand.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also, follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.